Hey there, all you beautiful Broadway babies! Welcome back to Broadway by Ghostlight. I'm Mark Bonanni, and this is episode 54 of Broadway Jeopardy, the world's foremost musical theater trivia game show that airs on Thursdays at 5 on this specific YouTube channel. If you're a giant theater nerd like me, or just a regular-sized theater nerd, hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Wishing all my fellow Americans a happy and reflective Juneteenth today. As always, I've got 26 all-new clues ready to test your musical-loving minds, so without further ado, let's get right into this week's game. This is Broadway Jeopardy! Looking at the categories for this week, we start off, as always, with last week's Final Jeopardy category, which is Ghost Singers. Looking at those unsung singing heroes who provided vocals for some of movie musicals' most iconic roles. After that, we have Studio 54. As this is our 54th episode, I thought we'd use this opportunity to look at the iconic Studio 54 and some of the plays and musicals that have opened there. Then it's Broadway Daddies. This past week was Father's Day, so we're belatedly celebrating with a category looking at some fathers featured in shows. Next, we have Extreme Close-Up. This will be a visual category where I'll show you a very zoomed-in look at a musical's key artwork, and you name the show it's from. And last but not least, we have Summertime, looking at some show tunes with the word summer in the title. And we end with the Final Jeopardy round, so make sure and keep track of your scores if you want, so you can wager some or all of your imaginary earnings on that final clue. We start off, of course, with the $200 round, or the overture round as we call it here, where the questions should be fairly easy to help you get a leg up on the game before I get you good with the more obscure shows and clues in the final round. We begin in the Ghost Singers category, where your first $200 clue is: instead of Christopher Plummer, it was Bill Lee's voice who brought film audiences to tears, singing Edelweiss in this classic musical's screen adaptation. What is The Sound of Music? Bill Lee was a voiceover artist as well as a ghost singer, or playback singer as they were also known. Bill Lee did voice work for several Disney films like Mary Poppins, Alice in Wonderland, and Peter Pan. Besides Captain Von Trapp in the film adaptation of The Sound of Music, Bill Lee also provided the singing vocals for Lieutenant Cable in the 1958 film version of South Pacific, and Trevor Graydon in the original 1967 film Thoroughly Modern Millie. Moving on to Studio 54, your next $200 clue is: this star of the 1998 revival of Cabaret returned to Studio 54 in 2006 in a revival of the Three Penny Opera. Who is Alan Cumming? The 2006 revival of Three Penny was an interesting one, to be sure. Besides Mr. Cumming, that production also starred Jim Dale and Anna Gasteyer as Mr. and Mrs. Peachum, singer-songwriter Nellie McKay as Polly Peachum, and pop music legend Cyndi Lauper as Jenny. The revival featured a modernized and gender-bending new book by actor and playwright Wallace Shawn.
And in those days, so very long ago, things weren't as sad and grim as they are now.
Looking at a Broadway daddy now with the $200 clue. In Disney's Aladdin, Princess Jasmine's father has this title in the fictional desert kingdom of Agrabah. What is Sultan? The original Sultan on Broadway was Clifton Davis, who was nominated for Best Actor in a Musical in 1972 for his role of Valentin in the musical version of Two Gentlemen of Verona, co-starring Raul Julia. Your first visual clue in the Extreme Close-Up category for $200 is: what is the Phantom of the Opera? So, have you ever noticed that the Phantom mask in the famous logo is quite different from the Phantom mask they actually use in the show? There is a reason for this. When the show was first designed, the Phantom was going to wear a full face mask, similar to the logo, which is more how it's described in the original novel the show's based on. However, during the musical's chaotic development, a few problems arose. The major problem was that director Hal Prince felt that with a full face mask, the actor playing the Phantom just simply couldn't emote enough to make the audience really care about his character and his journey. On the more technical side, Christine actress Sarah Brightman had trouble in rehearsals getting a grip on the Phantom mask to pull it away at the end without pulling off the Phantom's delicate prosthetics underneath. So a half mask seemed to solve all the issues, but by the time the new design was settled, the logo and promotional materials had already been well into production. And finishing up the overture round in the summertime category, your final $200 clue is... lovable Olaf in Disney's Frozen longs to be in summer despite the fact that he is one of these. What is a snowman? Voiced by Book of Mormon star Josh Gad in the films, on Broadway the role was created by Greg Hildreth. Later in the run, Ryan Redmond took on the role of Olaf, and I thought that was pretty cool to have a woman play the part, because, why not? I hope you all scorched that first round. Let's move on to the only slightly harder $400 round now. Circling back to Ghost Singers, your first $400 clue is... performer Drew Seeley provided the vocals for Zac Efron's character Troy Bolton in this Disney Channel movie, which spawned an entire franchise. What is High School Musical? Drew Seeley auditioned for the role of Troy Bolton in the first High School Musical film, but didn't land the part, which was surprising given that Seeley was also one of the writers of the score, co-writing Troy's song Get Your Head in the Game. The role of Troy as written was for a tenor to sing, but when Zac Efron was cast in the role, his baritone voice just couldn't sing the score as well as everyone would have liked. So Drew was brought in to replace most of the vocals. Zac Efron would do his own singing though in the sequels, with the songs written for Efron in mind. Taking a seat at Studio 54 brings us the $400 clue. Studio 54's last musical tenant was A Wonderful World, a biomusical about this legendary jazz musician whose hits included When You're Smiling, You Rascal You, and What a Wonderful World. Who is Louis Armstrong? The jukebox biomusical A Wonderful World played Studio 54 from November of 2024 through February of 2025. The musical starred James Monroe Iglehart as jazz legend Louis Armstrong, with James T. Lane playing the role at some performances. Though the musical had a fairly short run, Iglehart was remembered come Tony time with a Best Actor in a Musical nomination. Looking at a classic, if problematic, father in the Broadway Daddies category now, with the $400 clue. In the tour de force soliloquy from Rodgers and Hammerstein's Carousel, Billy Bigelow first imagines having a son, which he would name this. What is Bill? Yes, of course, the macho Billy Bigelow would name his son after himself. Soliloquy from Carousel, often mistakenly called My Boy Bill, is a 7+ minute tour de force number with a range of emotions that's sure to bring the house down if done right. The original Billy, John Ray, certainly knew how to give it some gusto, as evidenced by this amazing clip that I'm obsessed with.
I'll go out and make it or steal it or take it or die.
Let's go in for an extreme close-up with the $400 visual clue. What is Follies? The iconic artwork for Follies' original Broadway run was by David Bird, a legendary artist and poster designer known for his rock concert posters as well as his theater posters. Besides Follies, other stunning art created for Broadway included Godspell, Jesus Christ Superstar, and Little Shop of Horrors, just to name a few. And your final $400 clue in the summertime category is... Though obviously starting the season before, Spring Awakening ends with a song of summer that's said to be this color. What is purple? The song of Purple Summer, as the clue mentioned, is the finale song to Spring Awakening. I know I've mentioned this before, but I did merch for the original run of Spring Awakening, and we would get asked from time to time, what was that last song about? And honestly, I have no idea, and I'm not the only one.
I'm still asked to this day a lot. What is a purple summer?
We all joke about it, like, what the it does purple summer mean?
I don't know, it's about sex, probably. You know.
I wish I knew.
It might be Steven's favorite color. I don't know.
I think they needed a two-syllable word.
Keeping things humming along with the $600 round now. Back behind the curtain with the Ghost Singers category and the $600 clue. Ironically, this movie musical about the invention of ghost singing utilized the very same technique for its female star. What is Singin' in the Rain? In the plot of Singin' in the Rain, the greatest movie musical of all time, argue with the wall, ingenue Kathy Selden dubs the vocals for the verbally grating Lena Lamont. But in reality, Debbie Reynolds in the role of Kathy Selden was dubbed herself by Betty Noyes. And in one of my favorite little tidbits about Singin' in the Rain, when Debbie Reynolds' Kathy is dubbing lines for Gene Hagen's Lena...
All right, Kathy, go ahead.
Nothing can keep us apart. Our love will last till the stars turn cold.
That's not Debbie Reynolds' voice. That's Gene Hagen's actual speaking voice when not putting on the Lena Lamont performance. Looking at a play in the Studio 54 category with the $600 clue. This beloved Star Wars star brought her one-woman show Wishful Drinking to Studio 54 in 2009. Who is Carrie Fisher? Wishful Drinking, all about Fisher's real-life upbringing in Hollywood, was first developed at the Geffen Playhouse in Los Angeles before finally landing on Broadway at Studio 54 in 2008. The play also coincided with the release of her memoirs with the same title. An HBO documentary about the play was filmed and released in 2010.
If my life wasn't funny, it would just be true. And that is completely unacceptable.
The $600 clue in the Broadway Daddies category is... In Dear Evan Hansen, Evan visits the Murphy family, and the father, Larry, bonds with him over this piece of sporting equipment. What is a baseball glove? The song in question is called To Break in a Glove, and while I couldn't find any official clips of the original Larry in the show Michael Park singing the song, I did find a video of Michael Park actually explaining how to break in a baseball glove.
After you've given this a good rub for about 5 minutes, what you're gonna do is not use just one baseball. I prefer to use 2 baseballs, or what's better, a softball.
Looking at a Tony winner now in the extreme close-up category with a $600 visual clue. What is Memphis? The 2009 musical starring Montego Glover and James Monroe Iglehart was loosely based on the life of Dewey Phillips, one of the first white DJs to play black music in the 1950s. The musical, by David Bryant and Joe DiPietro, the team behind The Toxic Avenger and Diana the Musical, won the 2010 Tonys for Best Book, Best Score, and Best Musical. And let's find out if the living really is easy in the summertime category with the $600 clue. In the last 5 years, Kathy sings of a summer in Ohio where she roomed with a former stripper and her snake named this. What is Wayne? The first Broadway bow for the Jason and Robert Brown musical starring Nick Jonas and Tony winner Adrienne Warren is ending its limited run next week. So if you haven't seen it, you better get on that. It's time to really crank up the heat now at the $800 round, but before we do, if you're enjoying this week's game, please, oh pretty please, hit that little like button for me. It really helps with the almighty YouTube algorithm and getting these videos shown to more fine folks like yourselves, but also makes me feel like your heart belongs to this Broadway daddy. Thank you all, I really do appreciate it. Okay, let's get our heads in the game again with the $800 round. Looking at a legend in the Ghost Singers category brings us the $800 clue. This legendary ghost singer provided the leading lady's vocals in the original film adaptations of My Fair Lady, West Side Story, and The King and I, among others. Who is Marni Nixon? Marni Nixon is the undisputed queen of ghost singing, providing the vocals in some of the most beloved movie musicals, including, as the clue mentioned, Maria's vocals in West Side Story, Anna's vocals in The King and I, and Eliza's vocals in My Fair Lady. Miss Nixon also had a great career as herself in films, television, and Broadway. 10 years before she passed, Marni Nixon released her excellent memoirs titled I Could Have Sung All Night. The $800 clue in the Studio 54 category is... This heavy musical drama with a score by Adam Gettle starred Kelly O'Hara and Brian Darcy James as a couple struggling with addiction. What is Days of Wine and Roses? Opening at Studio 54 in 2024 after first premiering off-Broadway at the Atlantic Theater Company, Days of Wine and Roses follows a young couple as they meet, fall in love, and marry. But as their lives grow, so does their alcohol consumption until their lives are in complete disarray. While the husband, John, finally takes steps to get sober and reclaim his life, Kirsten, his wife, plunges further into abuse. A complicated and adult musical with challenging music thanks to Adam Gettle, also the composer of The Light in the Piazza and Floyd Collins. Naturally, the show's stars Kelly O'Hara and Brian Darcy James were more than up for the task vocally, being two of the best singers working on Broadway today. But their brilliant acting was what I will always remember from this production. Brian Darcy James, and particularly Kelly O'Hara, gave one of the most honest, brutal, deep acting performances I've ever seen. And anyone who tells you musical theater acting isn't real acting needed to see those two in this show. It was astounding.
Who needs dry land? Who wants wet sand? All I want is you. Two corks just bobbing around. Two corks in the Long Island Sound. We are.
Things are getting dramatic in the Broadway Daddies category with the $800 clue. In this 2015 musical drama, the relationship between Allison and her father Bruce is core to the story. What is Fun Home? Based on Alison Bechdel's autobiographical graphic novel, Fun Home saw an adult Allison look back on her life as a young girl and as a young woman as she comes into her identity and lesbian sexuality. At the same time, Allison's father, Bruce Bechtel, struggled living a closeted life, ultimately leading to his demise at his own hands. It's a heavy but powerful story brought to life by the musical's creators Janine Tesori and Lisa Cron. Zooming in even more now with the extreme close-up category and the $800 visual clue. What is Tootsie? Based on the classic comedy film starring Dustin Hoffman, the musical adaptation stars Santino Fontana as Michael Dorsey, a frustrated actor who problematically pretends to be a woman named Dorothy Michaels to get an acting gig. The always excellent Santino Fontana would win the Tony for his efforts in the show. Starring alongside him were Lily Cooper, John Bellman, and Sarah Stiles. While the original film had Michael/Dorothy working on a soap opera, the musical, with a score by David Yazbek and a book by Robert Horn, changed this to the character now starring in a Broadway musical. And blazing forth with the summertime category gives us the $800 clue. In the iconic Summer Nights from Greece, we learn that Danny took Sandy to play this game at the arcade. What is bowling? Yes, Danny and Sandy went bowling, drank lemonade, and stayed out until 10 o'clock. Oh, those summer nights. We've reached that point now, my friends. The big show, the main event. It's the $1,000 round. Give me that dramatic music. Best of luck, players. Circling back one last time to the Ghost Singers category, your first $1,000 clue is: this performer, the original Lois Lane / Bianca in Kiss Me Kate on Broadway, dubbed most of Rosalind Russell's singing in the film version of Gypsy. Who is Lisa Kirk is the right response. As the clue stated, Lisa Kirk was the original Lois Lane in Cole Porter's Kiss Me Kate on Broadway in 1948. She also introduced the song The Gentleman is a Dope in Rodgers and Hammerstein's Allegro in 1947. The 1962 film adaptation of Gypsy was the only ghost singing that Lisa Kirk did in her career, though she was said to have done some of Lucille Ball's vocal work in Mame. But the red-headed comedic legend disputed that, saying this in an interview.
Incidentally, the young lady who was supposedly doing my voice has a real right to sue, because she has a lovely voice and a great career of her own, and this is no compliment to her.
Our last trip to Studio 54 brings us the $1,000 clue. This 2011 musical starred Donna Murphy as a grandmother trying to pass on her stories of her time as a star of the Yiddish theater in Poland at the onset of World War II to her granddaughter. What is The People in the Picture? The People in the Picture, with music by Mike Stoller and Artie Butler, and book and lyrics by Iris Rainer Dart, took place in 1970s New York City as well as late 1930s Poland, as Donna Murphy's character goes from telling stories of her youth to her granddaughter to reliving them before our eyes. The cast included Nicole Parker, Louis J. Stadlin, Joyce Van Patten, and Broadway favorite Chip Zien. But it's Donna Murphy's excellent performance that's most remembered today about the show, I think. Her effortless and total transformation between eras of her life was thrilling to see in person.
And lately I'm forgetting what happened yesterday. But I remember very clearly yellow roses in the morning on a breakfast tray with napkins trimmed in lace.
The $1,000 clue in the Broadway Daddies category is: this story, loosely based on actor Chaz Palminteri's childhood, has been adapted into a one-man play as well as a musical. What is A Bronx Tale? After getting fired from a job, actor Chaz Palminteri wrote a one-man show loosely based on his experiences growing up in the Bronx and being torn between the hard-working, straight-laced values of his bus driver father and the allure of a life of wealth and danger with the mob. The play first premiered in Los Angeles in 1989, which led to the play being adapted as a major film in 1993 starring Robert De Niro and Chaz himself. In 2007, Palminteri presented the original one-man show version on Broadway at the Walter Kerr Theater. I did merch for that production. The play was then turned into a musical, which opened on Broadway in December of 2016, starring Ariana DeBose, Bobby Conte Thornton, and the great Nick Cordero as mob boss Sonny. During the run, Chaz Palminteri joined the cast of the musical, back again as Sonny, the part he, of course, wrote, but also played in the movie version. Your last visual clue for $1,000 in the extreme close-up category is: what is Dude? Ooh, that was a really tricky one. Let me know if you got this one. I want to see if anyone nailed it. Dude was one of those flop shows in the wave of rock musicals trying to follow in Hair's groovy footsteps. This is really one of those shows that would take an entire separate video to really explore. Here's one little glimpse into the world of Dude, though. The entire Broadway theater was gutted and filled with fake dirt, and audiences could buy tickets for the valleys, foothills, trees, or mountains. Apparently the foothills were the best seats, priced at $7, with trees and mountains being mezz seats, basically. Yeah, a wild but not completely unworthy musical odyssey, to be sure. And the curtain call clue in the summertime category for $1,000 is: this musical with a score by Harold Rome, which featured an actual swimming pool as part of the set, ended Act 1 with the song Summer Afternoon. What is Wish You Were Here? Based on the 1937 play Having a Wonderful Time by Andrew Kober, the 1952 musical Wish You Were Here is set in Camp Carefree, an adult summer camp in the Catskills. As the clue mentioned, the centerpiece of the set was a functional swimming pool, but critics felt that the spectacle of the swimming pool and other effects, such as an onstage fire and a rainstorm, diminished the, quote, warmth and unpretentiousness of the original play. The musical looked like it was going to be a fast flop until a performance from the show on the Ed Sullivan Show saved it, helping the musical run over 600 performances, including previews. And now we've reached the final Jeopardy round, my friends. Time to tally up those scores and decide how much you want to wager in the category Beep Beep. In this silly titled category, we're looking at some life-size automobiles and other vehicles featured in Broadway shows. Alrighty, has everyone made their wagers? Sarah? June? Samantha? Okay, here is your final clue. In the original production of Sunset Boulevard, Norma's full-size luxury car was driven on stage when she comes home at last to this famed Hollywood movie studio. What is Paramount Studios? The car in question is actually an Italian luxury car called an Isotta Fraschini, the Tipo 8A model to be exact. After the former film legend Norma Desmond gets a call from Paramount Studios, she thinks it's the big call she's been waiting for, to come back to work in the pictures. However, the movie studio is only interested in her expensive car to be used in a film shoot. And that's this week's game! How did you all make out this week? Are you ready for your extreme close-up? Or do you need a ghost player for the next game? Be sure to let me know in the comments. You guys know I love hearing from you and seeing your scores. Of course, I wouldn't be able to do this weekly series at all if it wasn't for my incredible patrons over on Patreon. You guys are my first, my last, my everything. If you want to be as incredible as these folks here and help support the channel further, you can check out my Patreon via the link in the video description. There's also a link to my merch shop if anyone is interested in anything like that. And if you're loving Broadway Jeopardy, please share these videos with anyone and everyone. I'm still really trying to grow the viewership of these videos. Be on the lookout for my next Broadway 101 video, which hopefully will be dropping soon. I will be back next week with episode 55, but until then, I'm Mark Bonanni. This is Broadway by Ghostlight. Thanks for playing.